Good. Glory to God for this amazing day. Thank God for waking us all up. Thank God for our life. So I'm Aisha Tatum. I am an international speaker, a 4-time author, and I'm the founder of Integrative Wellness. I teach women how to let go of past emotional pain, feelings of low self-worth, and fear by learning how to love themselves holistically in mind, body, and spirit so they can tap into their gifts, activate their purpose, and live their dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk to you guys about 3 steps to releasing past emotional pain. I believe that past emotional pain is what keeps us stuck. I believe it's what keeps us in bondage. I believe it's what keeps us chained down, not being able to become the fullness of who we were born to be. And when I say chains, I want you to think about the different types of chains that it keeps us in. Mental chains, meaning we are not able to think correctly. It impacts our ability to think correctly as we're bombarded with negative thoughts and negative toxicity. I also believe that it keeps us in a state of not being able to think clearly and be able to formulate ideas correctly. In addition to those mental chains, there's spiritual chains. We're not able to elevate into the men and women God is calling us to be because we are in bondage. We're in bondage from the pain of our past. It also impacts us from emotional chains where we experience anxiety, depression. We experience all types of emotional feelings, and these emotional feelings that we experience, what ends up happening as a result is we continue to manifest anxiety, depression, and other experiences that will continue to draw into us. It also manifests in the physical level. How do these chains manifest in the physical level? Well, they create diseases within the body. And the more we continue to hold on to the pains of our past, we continue to feel an emotional bondage. And so one of the things that we want to learn how to do is get free. Everybody say get free. We want to be able to get free from the pain, get free from the shackles, get free from other things that are holding us back. And why this is important? Because God wants to elevate all of us. He doesn't just want to elevate some of us. I believe that God has a purpose and a plan for each and every one of us. He wants each and every one of us to become who he designed us to be. But that's impossible when we're holding on to the pains of our past. Everybody say it's time to let it go. It's time to get free. It's time to remove these shackles that are mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally keeping us in bondage. I believe, honestly, that our past was specifically designed to position us for our purpose. And when I say position us for our purpose, I believe that God doesn't allow things to happen to us. Into that next level version of ourselves. But so many of us get stuck in the pain of the past. We go through these vicious mental and emotional and spiritual cycles where we're trying to figure things out instead of just going through the process that I'm going to teach in just a few minutes. So I believe that as a result, we end up being bitter. We end up being burdened. We end up being bothered. We end up being in bondage because of the pain of our past. And so what we want to begin to do is think about, like Buddha says, he says, forget the past, but keep the lessons. And I think that that's so key when we're talking about being able to transform into who it is God is calling us to be. When we're able to transform our mental faculties and the way we think about things, then we're able to let go of the pain of our past. So think about the lessons. Don't forget it. Forget the past, but think about the lessons. Don't sit there trying to figure things out. But I think the biggest problem that we have is struggling to let go of the past, struggling to make peace with it. Why? One of the reasons why is because we're leaning on our own understanding, which we shouldn't be doing. So we're trying to make sense out of things. But we also struggle with letting go of the past because I believe in the idea of we want to punish ourselves or punish others for the mistakes that they made or for the mistakes that we made. And so on a subconscious level, we can energetically keep ourselves back and stuck and begin to procrastinate or self-sabotage, or we'll make a commitment to ourselves, but we won't keep it. And a lot of times people wonder why they set goals and don't achieve them. They wonder why they say, I'm going to do this time of day, and they don't do it. It's because it's a form of that subconscious conditioning as a form of self-punishment. And so right now, what I want you guys to think about is, what is it? What is the one thing that you may be holding on to that you know for certain is literally keeping you back from being who God is calling you to be? Iyanla says, when we heal the wounds of our past, until you heal the wounds of your past, you're going to bleed. So until you take a look at what's wounded you, you're going to continue to bleed. You're going to continue to try to numb yourself with food, with drugs, with alcohol. You're going to continue to numb yourself with television, with toxic relationships, with procrastination. You're going to continue to numb yourself because you're not listening or listening to what the lessons were there to teach you. We're not focusing on what those lessons came to teach us. So it's important to look at those wounds. And then it's also important to recognize that those wounds hold vibrational imprints. Those wounds hold vibrational energy, and those vibrational energy patterns literally stay stuck in our body and continue to create havoc in our lives. How are these wounds formed? Well, they're formed based upon the experience that we went through, the perception we had of that experience, the thinking that then created the feelings, that then created the story, and then that created the beliefs, which created our subconscious programs. So one of the things that we have to begin to do when we're talking about healing is beginning to look at our unhealed wounds and take an honest, open look, because a lot of us have unhealed wounds from childhood, from past relationships, from adolescence, things that happened that we tried to forget about because we thought if we just forget about it, then it's not an issue anymore. But that's not the case. I want you to think about what that issue is for me. And I'm going to share with you what the biggest wound that I ever experienced in my entire life was and how it greatly impacted me. December 10th, 2014 is a day that I remember looking at my mother in her hospital bed. In her hospital bed after being informed by the doctors that there was nothing they could do to help save my mother's life. And as my mother was there in her hospital bed, she was like staring off into space, like her vision, she could no longer see because her organs had begun to shut down. And I remembered her mouth was wide open, like she was gasping for air because it was difficult for her to breathe. And I remembered that moment, and they informed me that our hearing is the last thing that leaves us before we die. So I said prayers for my mother. I talked to my mother. I told her how much I loved her, how she was my hero. But it was in those final moments of losing my mother and seeing her on her deathbed, getting ready to leave this earth. It was so traumatic. And that day is the day my mom took her last breath. And I spiraled into depression. I mean, I didn't want to live. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. I couldn't focus. I couldn't do anything because I was so angry with God. I was angry about what happened with my mother. And I felt like an orphan. It literally felt like somebody took a 12-gauge shotgun and blew my heart wide open. And I felt it was no reason for me to be alive. So for a whole year, I was angry. A whole year I was depressed. And then finally, I thought about it, and I was just like, my mom, I found a message from my mother in an old cell phone, and she was like, Aisha, I can't wait to see you speak all over the world. And that moment really broke me down because I said, my mom poured so much into me. I can't sit here and waste away. I know God has a purpose and a plan. My mom taught me about God. She taught me about the afterlife. She taught me to be a believer. And so I was able to gather enough strength to get myself not only in therapy, and I did do the therapy thing. And I think that the therapy was very helpful because it allowed me to talk about how I was feeling to someone who couldn't judge me and who didn't know me. But after several months in therapy, it was just like I still didn't feel whole. I still didn't feel healed. I feel like I made progress, but I wasn't getting to the root. And when I found a program in Atlanta founded by a woman who was able to heal herself from breast cancer and ovarian cancer without chemotherapy, without surgery, without radiation, I said, that is the person I need to learn from because I had just lost my mom from cancer. And so I learned her methods and her protocols, and it was so transformational for me. I learned through my own process of detoxification how to heal. And in that process, I decided that was something that I was called to do. It was something God put in me to do. And had I not lost my mom, I would not even be on the path of my purpose. I would not be where I am today and who I am today. So I want you to think about maybe what a situation is for you that caused you to experience so much pain, but maybe it was a lesson. it was a purpose to that pain. So right now, what I want to do is I want to talk about three steps to letting go of the past. And these 3 steps are very transformational. They're very profound, and they're very simplistic. I think a lot of times as human beings, we try to complicate the process. Like, we think things have to be hard, but God didn't make nothing hard. God made things easy for us. Okay, very first thing is acknowledgement. Everybody say acknowledgement. Acknowledgement. You are not your past. You are not your past mistakes. You are not your past failures. You are not your past baggage. You are not any of that. Everything that you went through, everything that you have ever experienced in your life is a part of a process of you unfolding and evolving into who God is calling you to be. And if you can begin to acknowledge that you're not your past, you can begin to make mental leaps and jumps. Why is this so important? A lot of times when we go through painful experiences, we then develop a self-image, a self-concept. We begin to see ourselves a certain way based upon what we've experienced. And a lot of times the way we begin to see ourselves is negative. It's disempowering. It's not our true identity as men and women of God. It's not the true essence of who we are. And because we have a self-concept that is inaccurate, we then begin to show up as less than. We begin to show up in a way that doesn't allow us to fully express and be and exhibit who we were born to be. So we want to begin to let go of that self-concept, and we want to begin to acknowledge that we are not our past. We're not our past mistakes. So don't let your past define you. Acknowledge you're not your past. You're supposed to learn from your past, but you're not your past. I also think that sometimes, because we tell ourselves these stories of trauma over and over and over and over again, one of the things that happens is we become identifiable with the trauma. Like, we can't even separate ourselves from the trauma. The trauma becomes who we are. So we have to begin to let go of these change and the from our past. Anybody who's ever been successful has had a painful past. It's not one person on the planet that you can think about, and even in past history, that didn't have some type of traumatic event that happened to them, that they had to overcome it in order to become who God was calling them to be. The second thing that I want to point out about that is, as I continue this point, is those wounds, and I mentioned this earlier, those wounds from our past are active vibrational frequencies. What do I mean by that? That means the experience that you went through, you thought about things. And as we know, thought is energy. Thoughts produce our feelings. Our feelings is energy. And these thoughts and these feelings go through every cell of our body. Literally, we are not only carrying because many times people sit up here, and I think that it's amazing. Don't get me wrong. We get the sage out. Hey, we're going to sage ourselves. We get the crystals out. We put them on. Where's my crystal? I have a crystal here somewhere. We get our crystals, right? Put our crystals on our forehead, on our heart space, and all of these things are amazing, right? They're great. But what we don't realize is that in order to truly heal from the past, we've got to get into the cellular level DNA. We've got to get into our past memories of these experiences, and we got to learn how to identify and release these energetic blocks. Because until we do, it doesn't matter how much saging we do, how many crystals we use, these vibrations have to be released. Why? Energy is neither created nor destroyed. Remember, we learned that in whatever grade, elementary school, basic science class. Energy isn't created or destroyed. Well, if our thoughts and feelings are energy, they're created when we go through these experiences. What happens when we don't transform that energy is that it gets stuck in our body. So we end up continuously manifesting these jacked up relationships. We continue to manifest lack of money. We continue to manifest not being aligned with what and who God is calling us to be. All right. The second thing I want to touch on is the second step. So we talked about acknowledgement. You're not your past. The second thing is acceptance. We spend so much time trying to figure out why. Why did this happen? Why did this have to happen? If only I would have done this. Oh, I should have done that. Maybe if I could have done this differently. We spend so much time in that process mentally that we lead ourselves into depression and anxiety. And we continue to release those chemicals in our body. We have to get to a point where we can accept things for what they are. It is what it is. but that doesn't mean it has to define me. That doesn't mean it has to ruin my life. That doesn't mean it has to take over my identity. That doesn't mean I have to see myself as inferior or inadequate or unworthy or undeserving. That doesn't mean I have to continue to beat myself up because of something that happened in my long ago past. So we have to begin to exchange. Buddha says, if you can't do anything about it, then let it go. Don't be a prisoner to your past. And what ends up happening is when we don't accept things for what they are, we become a prisoner to our past. I want you to think about, how are you going to live the life God has for you and really become the person God wants you to be if you're in prison in your mind, if you're in prison in your emotions, if you're in prison in your body? We can't even get the digital divine downloads and align with God the way we're supposed to be in line with him when we are holding on to all this negativity. It's impossible. So we got to begin to let that stuff go. The third thing is to forgive. I think that this is the most important aspect. We got to be able to forgive. And a lot of times it's not enough just to say, I forgive you, because half the time we're sitting there like, oh, I forgive this person. Deep down inside, we may not really forgive that person. We may want to forgive the person. We may have a desire to forgive, but we struggle with that because, again, that idea of punishment, the idea of judgment, wanting to classify things as right or wrong, wanting to punish ourselves and other people for what they did or what we did or what we didn't do or what they didn't do. And so we think if we ignore it, we think if we don't think about it, we think if we let it go, we think if we push it to the back of our mind, that it's not there. But that's not how forgiveness works. Forgiveness is a powerful process that involves you really being able to go into your own subconscious mind, access various memories that you've incurred, thinking and feeling, and beginning to release that and make peace with that and accept it by reframing your viewpoint. Wayne Dyer says, if you can change the way you look at things, then what you look at changes. The problem with most people, most of us at times, is when we're struggling with things, it's the way we see it. It's our own perception. But if we can elevate the way we see it, change our perception, then we can begin to make remarkable progress, quantum leaps, and really get to where God is trying to take us. I believe that not forgiving people is the root cause of a lot of our problems. Why do I say that? When you think about scripture, there's a verse in the Bible that says, out of the heart flow all issues of life. Okay, well, if out of the heart flow all issues of life, that means that my heart space has to be purified. My heart space has to be cleared. My heart space has to be well guarded and taken care of, because if it's not, I'm going to continue to manifest things that are not in alignment with the highest vision God has for me. It's impossible. How can we? Our heart space has to be cleared. Not only does it have to be cleared of a lot of the burdens that it carries, but I want you to think about it one step further. Where does our thinking take place? So many of us think our thinking takes place in our brains, but it doesn't. Our thinking takes place in our heart. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So if our thinking is taking place in our heart and our feelings are taking place in our heart and throughout our body, one of the things we have to begin to work on is our heart space. And one of the best ways to do that is through forgiveness. Now, if you struggle with forgiving, if you struggle with your ability to make peace, and I struggled with this for a long time, especially around self-forgiveness for things that I didn't do. And it wasn't until I learned this powerful process that I was able to begin to start releasing a lot of that unforgiveness from my heart space, from my body. And so if you struggle with forgiveness, what I'm doing on Thursday is I'm teaching a forgiveness workshop. This forgiveness workshop isn't just some Ruha workshop about why you need to forgive. This workshop is practical tip, a tool, a method that I use, that I teach, not just my clients, but also that I'm teaching the public, because I believe that it's important to learn how to forgive. And in this method, you're going to learn how to tap on various centers within your body to release energetic blockages and holes that are keeping you imprisoned in your mind, your body, your emotions, and your spirit. If it's something you want to learn how to do, you can sign up for it at the link in my bio on Instagram and on Facebook. And if you have questions about it, you can send me a message. The workshop is only $27. It's less than a full tank of gas. because I wanted to make it something that was accessible no matter if you worked in a boardroom or if you working at home or just trying to figure out how to make ends meet. I think forgiveness work, healing work should be accessible to people. All right. So if you have questions, you can always let me know, send me a message. And that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. So we talked about those 3 steps: acknowledgement, you're not your past; acceptance, accept things for what they are; and forgive yourself and forgive other people. I'm Aisha Tatum. I am an international speaker. I'm also the founder of Integrative Wellness. I'm a 4-time author. I teach women how to let go of past emotional pain, as well as feelings of low self-worth and fear, by learning how to love themselves holistically in mind, body, and spirit, so they can tap into their gifts, activate their purpose, and live their dreams. So it's been an honor and a pleasure. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. If no one has any questions, and I'm going to hop off. Clubhouse, feel free to raise your hand and come take those questions. For those of you guys on Facebook, send me a message. Take care and God bless. Does anyone have any questions? Hey, Yolanda. Hey, Rika. Hey, Rika, come on up. Hey, how you doing?
It's Aisha or Aisha? I don't want to say it.
Okay, so it's, oh wait, I